over 80% of our thoughts are negative. Over 80% of our thoughts are negative. I didn't sign up for that. You didn't sign up. We were born into that. This is how you start to build the 20%. Start talking about what you want and meaning it, and start to feel it and think about it. Because if you never say what you want, people like really say it, what makes you think you're ever going to have it? I break life out into 12 different areas. I ask for a dream or a vision in each of the 12. I ask you to rate your current life against that dream. And what I'm doing by doing the 12 areas of life and getting you to dream and say what's going on in your life is I'm getting you to unload your inner dialogue. And if you never did anything else except...
Talk to me about some of the methodology. So you've created some teaching at MIT. I just walked by MIT last week, by the way, and I noticed that everybody's from all around the world. I'd never been to MIT, but I walked all around that part of Boston,
Yeah,
and just getting some exercise after a meeting that day.
yeah,
And
yeah,
super cool. Like, it is literally the United Nations. It's amazing. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
but tell me about your methodology. Like, to teach
Okay,
at that level, walk us through some of the things that stand out or that our listeners may want to look deeper into,
sure.
to really evaluate it, because it's special.
I worked very hard at it. I really did. And I did. So it's really there's three parts to the homework that in order to sit with me, someone would actually have to do the assignment I'll describe. And then if you read my book or you bought Inner You, my programs, right? Like, it's all like, I have a lot of content. I'm 54 years old and I started my coaching business when I was 28 years old in the 90s, folks, right before coaching was a thing at all, right? I was made fun of for calling myself a life coach. I even had to pick whether what I was going to call myself, because there was no such thing. And I was like, what? What are you? Right? It was really, I survived. Okay. So here's the method. I break life out into 12 different areas. I ask for a dream or a vision in each of the 12 so no one can hide in just 3 areas of their life. I give you a rating scale. I ask you to rate your current life against that dream. I ask you to tell me why you gave it that rating. And then I ask you to explain what you think is between you and fulfilling on that dream. And what I'm doing by doing the 12 areas of life and getting you to dream and say what's going on in your life is I'm getting you to unload your inner dialogue from soup to nuts, right? Like, and then you think what you're explaining is totally normal, right? Like, oh yeah, this is exactly why I gave it a 6, right? But what you really don't understand is it's like, if fish don't know the water they're swimming in, they're like, we don't know we're breathing all the time. This is your inner dialogue getting it out of you. Okay. Like, you don't even know you're swimming in that thing.
Got it.
And let alone you can't discern it or figure your way out of that stuff. And that's the way you talk to yourself. Right. So that's how I get your inner dialogue out, along with your dreams and along with you starting. And if you never did anything else except fill that out, you'd be amazed that you literally are starting to get your higher self, your ability to like pause what you want in your life to start to happen. Because if you never say what you want, people like really say it, what makes you think you're ever going to have it? Okay, good. So, and then the concept also is that over 80% of our thoughts are negative. Over 80% of our thoughts are negative. I didn't sign up for that. You didn't sign up. We were born into that. And this is how you start to build the 20%, right? Like, start talking about what you want and meaning it, and start to feel it and think about it. Okay, so that's section 1. Section 2 is I believe and study epigenetics, and I call it spiritual epigenetics. It's called behavioral epigenetics, which is you don't just have your dad's brown eyes. I'm sorry to reform you. You have your dad's wandering brown eyes. Ouch. Right. So you don't just get alcoholism from it, you get everything.
Right.
Right. So so I ask you in this section to name all your parents, mom, and then dad, or whoever raised you, positive traits, and put 2 sentences next to each positive trait, and then say how it lives in you. How does that trait live in you? Is it the same, the opposite, or some variation? Please explain. And so I make you go through all your parents' positive traits and how you have them, and their negative traits and how you have them. And then if that hasn't killed you, then I make you do your parents' marriage traits. Oh my God, you two have their traits. Okay, so positive and negative traits in their marriage, and then how that lives in you in your dating career or your love career. Okay. And then also for those of you who are working crew, part of your issues regarding coworkers and difficulties, you can even locate in your parents' marriage issues, right? Sorry to inform you of that. Okay. So then the final section is your haunting memories. I actually want your positive haunting memories and your negative haunting memories. And I ask you to go through those 12 areas of life. So you trigger that it's money hauntings and love hauntings and spiritual hauntings because you never liked religion or what, like everything. Okay. And then I put it all together. So your dreams, your parent traits, and your haunting memories tell you why you're locked in to thinking and being stuck in your bubble. And my job is to help you break out of that bubble.
That's great.
Mm,
Well, you're touching on so many parts. You're getting that inward talk,
mm,
and you're touching on the parents and the blame,
mm,
and the things that we love. I love to tell people how once I learned that parenting was this imperfection of daily activity, like it's nothing but an imperfect thing. You're doing the best you can all the time, and you look back with the same set of eyes that you want your children to look at you with on
mm,
your own parents.
mm,
It opens your mind to a different concept. It changes the whole trajectory of how you were raised. And it's funny, I had a conversation. I my son's at college, right? My oldest is at college, and I would love for him to call me more. I definitely miss him. Like I'm absolutely like, and he's a bulldog. Like we're both like definitely strong personalities, and part of him showing me that he's going to be on his own is also not having to rely on me too much, right?
mhm,
And and I was talking to a friend, and I said, you know what's crazy though is I have to remind myself I didn't call my dad. I still don't call my dad all the time. Like it's just part of who we are. And so it's very difficult to want something that you don't even do yourself the way that you need to. And so many times in my life, I didn't see that. You know, you would only see the story that you're writing for
mhm,
yourself, your own
mhm,
version, not the
mhm,
part that's actually got the other truth in it, which is, are you asking for something that you're not giving?
mhm.
And it's such a you're but walking you through all those models, I
Yep.
feel like it's hitting on all those things, the positive things. It's not just trauma focused or
Mm-mm.
major
Not at
challenge
all.
focused. It's focused on this whole picture of life.
Yes. Yeah, it is and it's a ultimately I turn it into that you have a soul, right? It's a spiritual, like you are either being true to your higher self, your dreams, or you are a getting a little bit better than your parents. Like, what do you think? Anybody want to go for bigger? Like, can we go for something? Like, you want to go for your dreams? Do you want to like deal with your fears? You want to break out, right? And you want to fulfill on a word like a life that's not worthy to you. Like
Right.
whatever, I don't care what your dreams are. I am not voting on your dreams. I am not telling you to be a goody two shoes. I am not like none of that. I am telling you that you need to live hardcore. Like, or you will be complaining about yourself in your head and bitching about other people instead, right? Instead of fulfilling on yourself.
That's great. When you were
Uh,
talking about the first part, all I could think about was the power of shifting self talk in my own brain
uh,
and how in my life I can look back on major moments of shifting the way that I not only talked out loud, but on the way that I talked inside.
uh-huh,
And that's such a challenge. Like if you fly a lot, when the plane is delayed, like immediately your brain is like, it always happens. This is always that, that, that. Like you are losing it inside. And you have to like calm the brain. You have to say, hey, it's fine. Everything's going to be good. This happens. I can't control it. Just shifting the way that I think allows, and the old version was like, it was that control mechanism. It was the lack of control is really what I was having so much challenge with. And then as I got older, letting and releasing that and just
uh,
talking positively to yourself, because 80% of our thoughts, you said, are negative.
over
Over
80%,
80%
over eighty
of our
percent of our
I say I
thoughts.
listen. And
Yes.
it is true. And I think we have to, I think everybody has to shift that. And so that's great that you've guided that. Now you are known as a celebrity coach, right?
Yes. Well, I did a television show where that was the name of the television show, Celebrity
So
Life
now
Coach.
people say it all the time.
I have had celebrity clients, but it is not the majority of my clients, but I have some hot ones.
I mean, Hugh
I've had some
Jackman,
very hot ones.
Hugh
Yes, I still,
Jackman,
yes,
I mean, Hugh Jackman on your page. First of all, is it The Greatest Showman? The Greatest Showman
yes,
was like that is one of those one of those movies you watch with your kids, and you're like, this guy is so talented,
yeah.
and the storyline was so good. And I'm not a Marvel guy, so I don't care about Wolverine or any of that stuff.
Did you
I
go
know that
see it? It was good.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
I no, I don't.
Not the first, the one that just, the Deadpool, the one
I've
that just
seen
happened.
none of them. I have
Oh my
never
God.
seen any of them.
They're
I'm
really,
like, I know all of the world shifted though. I was never into that stuff, and now I'm the uncool one because I'm not. And so I've just never. I felt like I went to one, and I went with some friends, and they were like, "Oh, we got to stay till the end because there's something else, and they're going to tell us this." And I don't know any of that, and I was like, "I'm out of this
uh,
dialogue. I'm done. I'm going to watch the ones that come out. It's one movie. It's that's all I know. That movie. I prefer movies about like life and you know deep stuff, just
this
like
one is
music.
really funny.
Okay,
This
I'll go
one, and
watch
it's
it.
quite brilliant. And I was coaching Hugh. We, you know, we speak often, right? And it's a privilege. And I was coaching him when he was shooting The Greatest Showman too. So I date back a while. We must be like on 8 years or something or more. And he is as remarkable as everybody thinks he is. He really is that guy.
I listened to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you can feel him, right? Like what you
Yeah,
feel and
that
what you
energy.
experience and how he seems is really who he is.
I listened to Tim Ferriss interview him
Mm,
several years ago. And you know, I listen to a lot of long form podcasts like that. I
mm,
like the Joe Rogan, I like the Tim Ferriss. I like when they're able to get into the depth of things and topics
mm,
that don't you don't usually hit in an hour surface conversation. You want to try to
mm.
get a little deeper, and you could feel that energy. You could see, you know, he had a real like he turned that gig down in the Greatest Showman like I guess multiple times, and then finally he had something. I can't remember what it was, but like he had this dream or he had this moment where he was like, I got to do it. I just got to do it, and it turns out to be one of the best things he's done in his career. And then he did it, I think I don't think he did it on Broadway, but he did it like in
He did
Australia
a
or
world
something.
tour. No,
World tour. He did.
I actually sent him, I told him he had to go see Bruce's one man show,
Okay.
because that's his dream, like to be able to have the whole audience. And Bruce did such an amazing job of himself sharing himself, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, go see this. And then really he went and saw that and concocted that his dream, which was to go around the world singing. And, that was his dream. So he made it happen out of The Greatest Showman. And he didn't even realize his other line that is hysterical is he never understood until he was in the top, 100 songs on the charts that he always wished he was a charted singer, right?
Yeah.
So it like beautiful stories about like how special it all was for him.
Well, what I love is there's not enough stories in Hollywood, in life about optimism, about
Uh,
positivity, about
uh,
achieving your dreams and goals with failures that are substantial along the way. When you watch
uh-huh,
something and it highlights real life and
uh-huh,
it kind of charts the course.
uh,
It's not just good songs. It's about these kinds of movies that are they're if children are watching these things, it's opening their brain to something different.
yeah,
And I like
yes.
that. But listening to him talk about it was something I really I listened to a lot of interviews. I don't remember most of them, but that was one I remember pretty well. And because
Um,
I remember going, wow, he's actually a pretty neat human, not just a really great actor.
yes, definitely true. Definitely true.
Well, obviously, it's part in working to with people that are like yourself that are just helping to bring out the greatness in somebody, right?
Well,
That's what
someone
going
who's
through.
looking to have a coach is not your average human. Like they want like I have been hired. I have people like I lead classes. Once someone buys in or you, one of my digital programs, I lead classes every week for free once you're in. And that was my promise that granted, I'm really expensive one on one. But if you want to be with me, I want to be with you. Right. And I want to see the world be a better place. And so we can to, and then people getting together and being buddies. And the other thing I would say, which I want to lead back to, which is you and your son, right? So if you were doing my method, you would find out pretty quickly that everything turns into what are you going to promise? Like, do you want to call your son? Do you want to make a deal with your son? How often you guys speak? Like, don't you suffer? Let him know like, tell him and make an agreement. And then what if you have to call him twice a week, right? Like, is it really a big deal? Like, so I have to chase my children. I really do have to chase my children. And I come from my parents' generation, which sounds like yours, which is I have to call my parents or I'm a bad kid. And my mother has never called, like she doesn't call. I was going through a divorce, she didn't call. Right? Like that's my mommy, right? That it's my fault she didn't talk to me about the divorce. Really, right?
Yeah,
And so and so I raised my kids completely not that way, right? Like I wanted to do it differently, that I was going to be obsessed with them and so that it's but if I wanted to make an agreement, I could.
yeah. You're not suffering it. What you're doing is you're communicating. You're
Uh-huh.
laying out some groundwork. You're having some accountability, and you're both working
Uh-huh.
towards a common goal. Because most of the time, you both want the same thing. It's
That's
fun.
right.
My father called me one time in college, and it's because my sister, they wouldn't let me take my car to college. And my sister drove it while I was at school. She was in high school and she wrecked it
Uh,
and totaled it. So my dad called me to tell me this. And that was the only time in 4 years of college my father called me. And so and I guess what? Don't remember calling him either. Like it was I called my mom a lot. I did
oh.
but you I think it's part of also men have a tendency to want to they separate to build that strength and to create that independence and but doesn't have to be that way. So
Well,
you
no,
could kind of
you're like my joke is it's the epigenetics had you turn out a little better than your dad. Right? Like the dream would be something different. The dream would be a vision, and the vision doesn't it's an outer bounds, right? A much more outer bounds idea of what's possible in the area of love in your relationships, right?
sure.
Even with your father, right? So I have I call my mother, right? It's the deal, right? And then I even go, Mom, how often would you like to hear from me? And she goes twice a month. Like if my children will not ask that question because they don't want to know my answer. I'm like 3 times a week, maybe four.
I'm
Okay,
still
every day if you insist.
I'll take right now, I'll take every day. I'm in the first months of that empty nest feeling. And my wife and I are both like one of them calls the other, and it's like we're running over each other to talk. Hey, where are they? What are they doing? Where did they call you? What did they say? We're, it's like we're the boyfriend or girlfriend waiting for the guy or girl to call that we've been waiting
Oh,
all day for. And
yeah.
it's funny because for dads, this is something that isn't talked about a lot because our dad's generations were not like this for the most
No,
part. They were
no.
90% of them were not like this.
Uh-uh.
Today, so many fathers are so much more engaged in their children's lives. They're at all the games, they're at school functions, they're at,
Uh,
shows and things that they would have never gone to.
uh,
And I went to we went to a party this weekend, and we saw another dad that my son and him had played, that the two boys had played growing up together in soccer. And he just dropped his son off at college, and he goes, man, I was just all out of sorts for like 2 to 3 weeks. I came home. I didn't know what I was going to do. He said he went to the soccer park to go see he has a granddaughter from one of his older children. And he goes, I pulled in and I just had chills. Like I thought of all the good memories we had here and and it's so funny to listen to men talk about this because it's
uh,
something that, it's just not something I grew up with, or that our generation, your mom wanting to talk to you a couple times a month is not horribly abnormal.
no.
So they kind of set us out and just said, go, just go do what you're supposed to do. And, and it was a little today, you're kind of coddling them a little bit more. It's a little bit of a different game. But you feel it when that changes. So,
I think our parents didn't have the same. Don't shoot me for saying this, everyone, but I think our parents had no choice but to have children at a much younger age. It was like get you couldn't get laid unless you got pinned, right? Right, like you were not allowed, and it was way more of a religious world of sex was wrong and you couldn't shag through your 20s and it wasn't okay. And so um our generation and our children's generation are way more choosing whether they're going to have kids.
right.
And I think then the choice itself and the timing for the choice and when you want to do it is so much more meaningful than someone who
Felt forced.
like force. Was there another option? My mother, like, that woman did not have another option, and so it's a. And then how many people ended up with some real um problems because their parents, were not that into each other. Like they didn't even marry well, right? They didn't marry well. They got married because you got married if you wanted to shag and you
Right.
wanted to hang out. And so that whole, thank God, that whole way of thinking is almost like maybe done, should be done, and that people get married because they really want to have a family.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is you see millennials now outnumber baby boomers for the first time. Millennials are turning 40 in the last year or two for the first time. So there's a different age demographic, but you're seeing millennials were a group of people that their marriages were actually lasting longer. They were more unified in their decision making.
Mm,
There's a lot of interesting data, and I'm in the financial world, so I see a lot of the financial data. And if you want to blow up your lives, then you get married and you separate and you start all over again, and then you do it again, and that can be a very very challenging thing financially. And
mhm,
and so these are things that obviously we all are familiar with in different ways. But the reason I bring that up is you are seeing um, a choice to love each other and to be married. And you know
mhm.
I go back, I had the my parents were young, and so my mom listens to every podcast. I didn't know this, but if I wanted my mom to listen to me, all I had to do was start a podcast and she would listen to everything that I've said.
Aw,
and,
hi
and
mom.
so she listens every time. She'll send me very illegible text that I have to decipher about the episodes. But The beautiful thing is when you have young parents, you get to see them in like the natural habitat is what I say. Like it's almost like my dad and mom were in their 20s. And so I think that's where the music came from. You know, every good conversation has a full circle, right? My
Uh,
mom was a Beatles, Elton John, Billy Joel, like great artists. And my dad was a rock and roll guy. So it was like uh I mean, I can remember the Peter
Led
Frampton
Zeppelin.
albums, Led Zeppelin, like everything, AC/DC, like
Oh,
anytime, like he liked everything that was rock. Like he just did. If it had a guitar and so, but I fell in love with like both sides. And so it gave me the ability to kind of see the when the parents who are very uniquely different but come together for a common good, there was
uh,
always a unified front. And you start to look
uh,
at the things when you start to raise your kids. What did we do right? You know,
uh-huh,
what were the things that were consistent? What were some of the
uh,
things that were less consistent? And how can we
uh,
adjust those things? Maybe,
I
like
like
you
that.
said, be a little better.
Yes,
And they want you to
yes,
be. We all want you to be. I want my sons to be better. I mean, that's ultimately, you know, we want to be better for them too. That's part of the equation. How
definitely.
how do you use what you teach personally? How do you find, just curious, because I feel like everything in my life model is something that I've tested, something that I do, something I'm constantly working on. Is it this, do you go through some of your own exercises on a regular
All the
basis?
time. I daily design every day. I do a night design every night before bed. I send it out, I answer to it, I have promises, I have consequences that I'm keeping. I live my method. I have dreams. I have a lot more, like I have bucket lists, I have fuck it lists, I have everything, right? And I teach manifesting and I stop people from manifucking. Sorry everyone if you don't like my cursing. Um so I do everything. I do. I think that's why I'm good at my job is because I
You're
practice what
doing
I
it.
preach. I
Yeah.
practice what I preach, and and I really do tell, right? So you're not you're going to know what happened in my divorce if you need a story regarding love, right? Like I am not ashamed of my life.
I feel that part of how you figured out you wanted to do full-time coaching at 28 years old and you were a life coach is because you always lived your life in a vulnerable and authentic way, and that allowed and attracted people to tell you things that other people don't talk about. And you
Yes.
find yourself guiding people in ways because you listen. Not only, it's the same thing we talked about with music, you're not just listening to the words in a way that they were written, you're listening to the words in the way that they were written, but how they impact you in your life. And when
Uh,
you can do that and you can share a part of your own life and that vulnerability and that authenticity, you build trust with someone that connects you in a different level, and that's allowing you to help them build. I think that's a great thing, and not everybody has that gift.
yeah. I the greatest privilege of my life is how many true life stories I know and what I get to hear on the most detailed, intimate storytelling and where a person is respected for how they see their own life and then helped to like use these principles so that they can change their own life. Like I'm teaching you how to do it, not doing it for you.
Right.
Right? But it comes from a profound, like, I love humans. I love people's stories. I love people getting out of their paper bag. Like, get out of, like, I love them discovering their capabilities, right? Like, it never gets old. It never gets boring. And sadly, it never gets done. Like, it's never over,
There's more to
right?
do. There's always
There,
more to do.
and people are constantly falling off.
Right.
Right? Like we pretty much suck at chasing being remarkable. Right? We're not winning any awards, right? And so it's a lot of fun to help the ones who really want to be deal with it.
Knowing it isn't worth it, we have to do it. And A lot of times we do it for a short amount of time and we know it for a longer amount of time. And then we go back to doing it and then we go back to knowing it. And it's that battle between knowing and doing that so many people get trapped in that cycle.
Well, I have a rule that you're not allowed to pretend you know something you don't do. That makes you a liar. Like, don't tell me you know that and don't do it. If you
Yep.
actually knew it, that's like if you, and I give an example, if you know the GPS works, right? When are you taking out a map? Right. So don't tell me you're breaking a green. Don't tell me you're not using the GPS and you're using a map. No, you wouldn't. No, you don't know. Right. That's a lie. Right. And I love teaching people, like, there's 7 different ways people lie. In the new book I just wrote, there's a lot more than 7. Right. It's
Well,
it's also not a very popular topic to discuss with humans.
oh, well, I mean, I understand it completely. And I also feel like I've always been that vulnerable and authentic soul. And so nothing bothers me more than when someone's telling me something I know they don't know about and they're not doing. And
Mm,
so because if you're going to be authentic about something and you're vulnerable
mm,
and you're sharing something and you're
mm.
saying, oh, I really want to change my diet or I really want to do this. And they're like, oh, here's what you need to do, but they've never done it. That's the
Right.
worst. That is the worst. So, integrity is everything. But when you are an honest person, sometimes that can be a pretty challenging thing when people are having that conversation with you and you know it. And you're like, all right, come on, man. I know better
That's pretty much what I get hired for.
to
I'm
help
like,
them.
um, yeah, yeah. Well, I've had many nicknames, but the one you're reminding me of is Zander the Demander. Okay.
So you're holding them accountable.
I get them all set up to be held accountable, connected to their higher selves, their vision for themselves,
Right.
their true light, like the light they wish they would lead. And then I hold you accountable to do it day in and day out.
Isn't it beautiful to think about the very questions that you ask people all the time and when you reverse
Mm.
it on yourself that you get an answer that you weren't sure would even come out of that question?
I mean, that's really one of the ways I roll, right? Like the mystery of what our own higher self would answer if we actually asked it on a regular basis. That's a lot of one of my little tricks in my coaching process is you don't ask yourself what you really think. And then maybe you should say it out loud. Like hear yourself.
Well, isn't it hard to ask yourself great questions when you're too busy? Most of the time, so many people spend too much time shaming themselves or thinking about the failures or living in that negativity space versus maybe the what if space of what they could accomplish if they had a question like that asked. Or I feel like I talk to so many people that when you start asking them questions, they start going, I've never thought about that.
Mm,
They're usually so used to that, living in a space that they're hard on themselves versus the space where you give yourself the freedom to do whatever 8 hours a day. You don't worry about the result and you decided to paint. That's
mm.
just an awesome experience and something that obviously has paid off greatly for you.
Yeah, and the reason I set it up for 8 hours straight, 7 days a week, was it would have to be something you would love to do, like, and then it would be enough time to get good at it, right? So and how sad that we don't have time to get good at things we want to get good at for no reason, just for the love of being, right? And so it was a great question and it still is, right? Like people should answer that because you can get an insight into your heart and what you know, care about doing or what would be fun, like pure fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people have
Well,
careers.
would you pick soccer though? Is it just do you have
It's
a
funny.
choice?
It's funny. I was actually thinking about that as you were saying it. I think I could I could enjoy coaching soccer, leading people, even podcasting, having conversations like this. I could do this for long periods of time because I love the exploration of a conversation. I love
Mhm.
understanding, your background or something as simple as the paintings behind you and where they came from. I'm so curious that
Uh,
I feel like that is something that when I do this, I have a day job that I do every day and I love what I do,
what do
but
you do?
I am the CEO of a financial services company,
Mm.
and I'm now also in charge of all mergers and acquisitions for a larger entity that purchased us, and we were
Mm.
acquired a year ago. And so I kind of run two operations. I run the business, and then I also lead all mergers and acquisitions for the new entity, which is a much larger entity. And
Cool.
so yeah, it's fun. There's with mergers and acquisitions, there's a lot of curiosity, understanding what somebody has built, why they built it, what they're looking to accomplish when they're no longer doing it, who's the best resource to take over, how can we amplify the business to a new level. Like it's the same concept, but it's not as easy or as fun to me as just sitting and having a conversation with you today. This is a very smooth and interesting part of my day. Regardless, I don't ever go, oh my gosh, I have a podcast. This is going to be, what am I going to, oh, I got to check out a really cool book and, and learn about another human. I got to go on your Instagram page and see Hugh Jackman talking about how he's used your methods to accomplish more in life. I mean,
Mm.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I don't see that as a challenge. So I don't know that I've asked my question seriously enough. Maybe I need to spend a little more time with that question.
It can never go wrong because I've added to it, right? So now I fully paint, but now when I have free time, my new greatest love is farming, gardening. Like I'm in the dirt. Like that's my new thing. And I really love it. Like I love exercising, but I've replaced the concept of fully exercising into like hoeing potatoes, right? Like get in the dirt. And so that's been my new greatest shocking, right? Because if you knew where I grew up and you knew what a city girl I am, you'd be like, you're farming. Is it true? And I'm like, it is. It's true.
Well, I think a lot of times when we've come from somewhere, there's a curiosity to that, and we didn't know that life. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, and my dad's a gardener, and my dad
Mm,
loves gardening, and that's
mm.
he's always had a garden my whole life. I've never gone out and gardened with him, but I am intrigued by it, and I've always been. I tell my wife all the time, like, I'd love to have a farm, and we could have all this space, and it would be great. And she's like, "You can't fix the toilet. What are you gonna do?" So,
That's funny.
well, we'd have a team. We'd figure it out. We would do it together. So, when you did you find yourself asking you that question? You said your kids had moved on. Was it that empty nest portion of your life where you kind of found a little bit of space and you were looking for something to connect to, or was it just happenstance?
It was like it was more because I had three kids and was building a company. So my free time went to my kids and building a company. And the only other time I had was like, I need my hair colored. I get to exercise, uh, food, I get to eat. Right. And then that was all there was on that list of what else is happening in my life. And so then by the time the kids are like, leave me alone, I don't need anything from you.
Right.
I had this free time on my hand where even if they were around and I was taking care of the kids, I had something to do and I was centrally located in the living room, right, painting. And I was so happy because it was painting and music. Music is one of my most favorite loves. Like you will hear me teaching about like I do a lot of music
Do
is
do you
part of
have a
my
what
yeah.
what do you love? What is your go-to? Or do you love music in a way where you love to go see live music? Are you someone that just loves to listen to different things? What is your genre? What are you listening to? Who
Well,
are
I'm
your must listen
oh,
tos?
I'm Prince,
Okay.
The Roots, right? Like so I coach Questlove from The Roots. So I am like a 90s girl.
Yeah.
90s hip hop girl, I confess. And then I will go back to 70s music. Earth, Wind and Fire, yes. Stevie Wonder, of course. Right. So I love all of like I just yes. So I'm a dancing, and then you can hit Bruce Springsteen and so and then yes, I've been to concerts and I I'm obsessed with music and playlists. My whole life is to playlists. And I teach people to put their lives or issues and time in their life to a playlist to heal things. So music has always been. So music and painting together are like,
The perfect creative outlet.
right, a reason to be alive to 160, right?
Yeah, it's funny when I started meditating later in my life because everyone talked about it being something good,
Mm,
and it was something that I needed to find peace in my day and relax. As I start meditating, right? And when I meditate, I started realizing that I had been meditating my whole life when I listen to music.
mm.
So what you don't understand is that for me, I've always found that peace and that presence when I'm listening to music. When I listen to something I really enjoy, I listen to a whole album. I listen to whatever it is. I can be fully present and everything else is
All right,
gone.
what's your album? What
So
must you have?
it's
What's your must? Like, oh
I
my
think it's
God, don't take
I
them out of my life.
yeah, man, I can't even narrow it down. I mean, it's crazy. I will go all the way back to like Louis Armstrong and Duke
Last thing
Ellington.
you listen to.
Noah Khan is new. That's the newest album I just listened to. I really like it. I love the album. I love what he's creating, and it gives me a Counting Crows vibe. So I feel like the
Ah.
Counting Crows with Adam Duritz was
Yeah.
ultimately creative, and August and Everything After was a phenomenal album. I also love the Beastie Boys back then, and Rage Against the Machine, and
Oh,
I mean, I liked '90s hip hop, but I kind of shifted towards that. I made the shift at the time I was in high school to the Pearl Jam, Nirvana, that Counting Crows were like when they came out in 94, 93. That was like the perfect alternative but folky and lots of melancholy. It was, that's the
I understand.
it's how you it's it I want to feel something. So when I listen to music, I want
Yeah,
to feel what the artist is going through. I'm a lyrics person. I listen
me
to
too.
everything, but I love the words.
Okay,
So
ready?
yeah.
So I taught at MIT for basically 10 years and I got to develop all my content. And then if you know MIT, which most people don't, most people are going for their PhDs, which literally means they're going nowhere for 10 years, right? They're just sitting there, right? And they were all happy to be taking my class because we were developing their lives. I got to do a human study and study their development. So then imagine that I get to now I know everybody and we all know each other really well. And so I took a week long course where I took about 40 people and we were going to heal with music. Okay. And we were going to, and what they had to do, and I showed them how to do it, is you had to pair your issue you were dealing with a song that could heal it. And you had to go for a run or do some form of exercise and put it together and let yourself release the feelings of whatever you had. And then you, like, whatever was going on, and you had to show up. And because we all knew each other, you had to literally present your experience. And every day we were working on issues and what you learned from the music and how you were healing yourself through the music and the lyrics. The most interesting part, which you don't hear coming yet, was like no one from MIT is from America, right? Like they're not from America. Like
Right.
you, I didn't know one song, like
Oh
like not
no.
even one. And what was even better is it didn't matter because the kid was so moved by what they were fixing in their relationship with their father or their relationship in their pushing in their career that the song moved the situation no matter what. And everyone was moved. And it just showed it just blew my own concept of that it was the lyrics or my understanding of them,
Yeah.
and none of it mattered. It really was the human being moved by their own connection to it.
Yeah, I think for me, going back to that point, I think I've always felt like that. So it was something that could take me through something when I needed to sleep better. I would listen to James Taylor all night. My mom would get up early, and I had a younger brother who was severe, like much, much younger than me. And by 13 years, so he was a child and I was a teenager. When I need to sleep, he's like a 2 year old and a 3 year old. And so I'd put on James Taylor on repeat, the greatest hits, and it would play all night long,
Oh,
but it would kind of drown out the loud clanking of my mom in the background in the morning, and then my brother would wake me up, but it would be the music would just come on. And so I feel like we all have a soundtrack to our lives, and I think some of us just walk around with music playing in our head all the time. I feel like I have like a song at all times where I'm wondering if everyone else just has that
No,
going
they
on
really
or if
don't.
that's no. Okay. See,
No,
I'm
I've
different.
turned people on, like you're saying, and then let's say you then believe what you just said is must be true. If I love it, everybody else is loving it. Answer is the amount of people that need to be told to go make a playlist or to find new music or to care about music, it's not actually as popular as you think. Like it really is a something I've contributed to people more than I would imagine. And
That's amazing.
right, like, yeah, no, people are not obsessed. And I would even say I can even go back through parts of my method that I developed that I learned from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Like it was that one line in that one song that while I was 18 and dealing with something, I had an insight that changed my life and is in that book you're holding. Right. So
That's
I connect learning and being coached by songs.
during to that point during COVID when
Mm.
everything was shut down. My one I'm an extrovert, so being connected to people
You sure?
is I should have started the damn podcast back then. I was too slow, so I was waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for. But the first thing that I did was I made a list of all the music that I hadn't seen live, and
Mm.
I refused to miss anything that was close. And I mean, I went to see Jack Johnson in Charlotte. I went to the Avett Brothers at Floyd Fest, all the way in Southwest Virginia in the mountains. I rented a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was beautiful. I I did, and whether my wife wanted to go or not, I also just said I'm going, and if someone wants to go with me, great. If they don't, don't. And I planned so much of that year where things broke in and around live music because the endorphin release, the peace, the comfort, the
Mm.
all that comes with that to me was so worth it that I was it's something I couldn't get. One last point, Matt Carney is an artist I really like. He's out of Nashville now, and he's like my age. He's in his 40s. He's I went during the pandemic. He would sing with his kids like running around. He'd go in like a studio and he'd just go live and he'd sing. And I would listen to the shows, because you could just put it on the background while you're cooking or doing whatever.
Mm.
And I went to his show at UVA, and he mentions that he goes, the last show I did was in wherever it was, and I was there. And there's literally this moment where all the UVA kids are still like, it's fairly new after COVID, so they're all masked. Everyone's in masks. They're all
Oh.
spread out. They're all spread out like super far. And so I just went right up to the front and I'm watching this. I'm like a middle-aged guy by myself with another middle-aged guy singing, and he exchanges like this glance, and it's almost like, oh, he's like, was anybody at that concert? Now I didn't think half these kids were even like, they weren't even like in out of high school yet. And I kind of like sheepishly raised my hand, like, yeah, I was there. He looks at me and he's like, all right, well, I'm going to play some old stuff. And I don't think anyone in here is going to know it except me, maybe. So it was really, really,
Ah.
really funny, but it's little things like that that I look back and yeah, it's extremely powerful. And how have you done this with your three children? So
Mm.
I'm curious that it's always an interesting question
Mm.
because the people that um, I'll give you time to think about it while I prattle
No,
for a
I
second.
already know. I'm good.
Um, but the point I'm going to make is I always think when my son was going to college, I wrote him a little note and I laid out my life model, and I've talked about it and I've
Mm.
guided, but I've never genuinely taught it.
Mhm.
And it's hard to teach someone who's your child because they listen to you all the time, and
Mhm.
so they don't see you in a way that could, they know you can help them, but it's a different thing. So I'm just curious. That's a long way of asking how you've executed with your great
Mm.
model that you teach so many people.
Mm.
How have you found that with your children?
Um, I don't coach my children, though my youngest definitely asked for coaching and calls me when she needs it. Like I get called when they need it, actually, which is beautiful. So I get used, but I definitely did not pressure them turn at all. I actually believe kids don't do what you say, they do what you do.
Yep.
And so my kids are, um, my oldest is like, didn't go to college, didn't care about college, she worked at a John George restaurant, was in the food industry and was working since she was 15, 16, and
Hmm.
has like that. I have to beg her to take time off, right? I beg her to play with me. And then my son is at St. Andrews. My son, now I never got great grades. So the last thing I could do is make my kids get great grades in school or even pretend I care because I didn't. It's up to you. So my son got straight A's and went to St. Andrews in Scotland.
Wow.
And then my youngest also shockingly cared about, like, he wants to beat Parker and wants to be better than him. So all like I had to do very little, and they are like, I'm really a teacher of individuality. And I'd rather you tell me the truth than ever have to lie. And I will not make you do anything. And the only way I would ever make one of my kids do something is if I thought they weren't happy, like depressed,
Right.
hiding. Right. But as long as they're happy and thriving in their lives, it's none of my business what they choose to do. That's them fulfilling on their lives. My job is to clap and pay for it all.
Up to a certain point. Uh,
Yes, agreed. Very much
yeah.
agreed.
Because I could tell you in my career, in my first generation of my career, I've watched too many children go from being amazing children to enabled children to demanding children to, unfortunately, the latter versions become crazy and they don't know how to function on their own without us. And so it's that what you're teaching with individuality is you're teaching all the things that they need to be functional and as a human and to be successful. And that's
Uh,
why the grades and the other stuff just doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things, because they're, they could be accomplished if they're enjoying their life and doing
uh,
what they love.
uh-huh.
And it could be anything. You could have a very small amount of money, you could have a large amount of money. All those things are relative to what your needs and goals are.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yes.
that's
Yeah.
that's great. Well, it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear the breakdown, and I think, I agree. I think it's good to guide when needed, but not
Uh-huh.
to pressure, because you're not the message isn't going to be the same anyway. And the
Uh,
cheerleader point is so true. Believing in
uh,
them, if nobody else believes in them, mom and dad will. So hopefully, I know lots of friends that don't have that relationship. So I always felt blessed. But
yes.
how can people get a hold of you, of your message, of your model?
Uh,
What are some of the ways that our listeners can, we dabbled in a great conversation today to
uh,
just understand a little bit of who you are, which I
yes.
think is more important if you're listening. Like I read books to understand the person and the human, but the methodology doesn't matter until I really know what they're
uh,
doing, how they've done it, who are they doing it for. And so
yeah.
you've shared a lot of that, and I think that's really interesting. How do they
Thank
find
you.
you?
Uh, I have a website. I'm handelgroup.com, right? So I'm the Handel Group. And Inner You is INNER.U.coach, right? So my program's Inner You. And my programs are Inner You Life, which is the one I explained. And then I do a whole lot of work on Inner You Love and get people out of their their issues around love. And then I do Inner You Career. And so those are my main programs where you can get the majority of my content. If you want, like, reading a book, it's called Maybe It's You, Face Your Fears, cut the crap, face your fears, love your life.
I've got it right here. If you're on
Excellent.
YouTube, you can see this. If you're on Apple or Spotify, you can find it. And
Yes.
how connected? So last question,
Yeah.
but how connected is the loving your life to allow you to love the other human that you're next to? So how the relationship portion that you spend a lot of time helping
Uh,
people,
uh,
how much of that is helping them actually find their own journey?
wow. You can find your own journey and not love your mate that you didn't love, like you come from, you didn't, you loved who you wish they were.
Right, right.
right? Not loved who you actually married. So that's a loaded question. And you can love your life and not be happy with your mate, and you can be unhappy in your life and be very happy with your mate. So Mhm.
It's mixed.
I don't have them directly connected, but the more you love your own life, the less you'll think the other person's supposed to make you happy.
Right.
Yeah. So there's definitely truth in that. And yeah, and then really not wanting to fix the person you're with is the greatest trick I teach. Like, stop trying to change them and make agreements and accept them, right? And that the union of the relationship is above the individuals. And so I teach people to create a union that works and to stop fighting as individuals. And most people are having the same six fights. They're not like, you wish you were having a new one, right? I wish you were having a new one,
Yeah.
right? So people can do much better in their love lives, right?
I think everybody that listens to this show are the kinds of people that want to be a little bit better every day.
Huh.
So at the
Yes.
end of the day, our audience, high performers are often striving. Sometimes they found the reason of what they're striving towards and it's bigger than themselves. Sometimes it's about proving that they belong where they are, but
Mm.
ultimately they're trying to be a little bit better every day. And so your message, your website, I think it was inner.u, right? Is that what it was? Give me the
Inner.u.coach?
coach.
Maybe we
There it
better
is. Okay. One more time.
inner.u.coach.
Go to it, check it out, get a little better every day and
Yes.
see what's working for the celebrities, see what's working
Mhm.
for all of the regular everyday people like us.
Mm.
And whether it's your life or your relationship, it sounds like you're the right call to make. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was way fun, and it
I'm
really
glad
is
you
nice
enjoyed
to
it.
meet you. Very nice to meet you.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.